Tari Eason's breakout sophomore season has him flying up draft boards into Lotto range, and after watching every bit of film I could get my hands on, it's easy to see why his blend of elite athleticism, feel for the game, and blossoming ball skills have made scouts fall in love with him. But before we talk about his NBA future, we first have to go back. This is high school senior Tari Eason. He's losing this game, but that's okay, because a month from now, he's going to beat the same team in the state championship, which is impressive because they have this guy. He's also going to win Washington State Player of the Year and MVP of the state playoffs, and it mainly comes from doing stuff like this. At this point, Tari's biggest appeal comes on the defensive end. With an extremely long wingspan and similarly extreme motor, he's constantly getting his hands on the ball, averaging a combined 4.8 steals and blocks per game in his senior season. Despite being just 18 years old, Tari is already listed at 6'7" and 200 pounds, and that size makes him just big enough to handle bigs on the inside, and on top of that, he's also quick enough and agile enough to stick with smaller players on the perimeter. That level of defensive intensity, physical tools, and switchability lead to monstrous defensive potential. On the offensive side, Tari's athleticism allows him to sky up for a deep catalog of highlight-worthy dunks. And when his team's in need of a bucket, their go-to is getting Tari the ball around the foul line, where he takes one pound dribble before trying to snake around the defenders for a right-hand finish. However, what stands out even more about his offensive game are the flashes of greater unrefined skill. Tari is able to pull off some impressive moves when handling the ball from a standstill, and while that doesn't fully translate to his dribbling on the move, he actually scores a good amount of his points on self-created drives from the perimeter. He's also a more than willing passer who is always looking to get his teammates involved. Tari's shot is more of a mixed bag. On occasion, he'll hit a step back three like this one against Paolo, but his form certainly has flaws, and the numbers don't treat him too kindly. It's challenging to find exact shooting splits for high school players, but from what I've been able to gather, his free throw percentage was somewhere in the low 60s, and his three-point percentage was hovering in the 20s. Tari's ranked as a 4-star prospect and receives offers from 6 high major schools, which he narrows down to a final 3 of USC, Colorado, and Cincinnati. Tari's freshman season at the University of Cincinnati was a mixed bag. The biggest highlight came on the defensive end, where he became just the second high major freshman to record a block rate higher than 7 and a steal rate higher than 3. And his defensive versatility shined too, as he succeeded both defending in the post as well as along the perimeter. However, he started just 8 of the 23 games he played, which was a product of 2 big issues. The first was foul trouble. He fouled out of 4 games, including a game against Temple where he lasted just 7 minutes. A lot of those fouls came from overhelping, most frequently when trying to block an opponent's shot instead of just contesting them. The other issue was his shooting, or lack thereof. Tari's form suffered from 2 major issues. For one, he would completely remove his guide hand from the ball before releasing his shot. The weight of his non-shooting arm moving the opposite direction as his shot throws off his balance completely. The other was a result of his extremely long wingspan. Tari's shot often came with his biceps and forearms at a greater than 90-degree angle, and because his arms are so long, that meant his release was extremely far from his body, which inhibited his shot stability, leading to 24% shooting from 3 and a 57% mark from the free throw line. On top of this, he struggled as a finisher despite his size and athleticism, ranking at just 36th percentile among all NCAA players shooting at the rim. He tends to force all of his rim attempts with his right hand and doesn't bump rim protectors on the way up, which ends with him getting blocked quite a bit. This combined with his shooting woes led Tari to scoring in double figures just 6 times in his freshman season. But as an offensive bright spot, Tari's passing instinct did begin to materialize into him more consistently finding open teammates. At the conclusion of the season, Tari decided to take his talents to the transfer portal. Tari was expected to contribute off the bench during his sophomore season at LSU, but not only did he contribute, his production exploded. On paper, LSU's bench lacked offensive punch, and Tari took advantage of that, carrying a monster 32% usage. He was doing a lot of the same things he did in high school, but now better than ever. His self-created rim attempts led to him drawing a lot of fouls, and when he was shooting sub 60% on those free throws, the defense could live with it. But Tari's shot had undergone some massive improvements, leading to a free throw percentage over 80. He no longer preemptively removed his guide hand on his shot, and his form was much more compact, meaning a release much closer to his body for added stability. On top of that, LSU got out in transition a lot, where Tari was able to flash his athleticism and collect most of his 47 dunks, and his overall scoring numbers more than doubled from 7 to 17 points per game. On the defensive side, LSU played a hyper-aggressive pressing system which fit Tari perfectly. His long wingspan and high motor contributed to him grabbing just under 2 steals a game, but where he was even more impactful was as the system's cleanup man. LSU's aggressive style led to a lot of loose ends on the backline, and 2 key traits of Tari's allowed him to cover those up. First, his intelligence, as he could consistently see these openings coming before they happened, identifying where he needed to be before he needed to be there. And the second was his elite ability to cover ground quickly. He'd often make these long cross-court rotations just in time to contest what should have been easy shots. All of this worked out for LSU to start the season 11-0, and for Tari to not only win SEC's 6th Man of the Year, but improbably he was named to the All-SEC first team off the bench. So now that we're all caught up on how Tari got here, how does he project as an NBA player? Around which pick is he likely to be drafted, and which team is the best fit? His value will mainly lie on the defensive side of the ball, at least early on in his career. His 6'8", 215-pound frame make him quite switchable, and he can flip his hips quickly, which allows him to stick with his man through changes of direction. And he's strong enough on the interior to at least show some resistance against bigs. Tari's high motor and quick ground coverage are awesome tools for him to be an elite help defender, and he shows a level of defensive intelligence that is hard for players to learn. Tari has extremely active hands, and his hands are super strong. On 2 occasions, he was able to get his hands on the ball and completely tie up a full-speed driver. He's going to be an event-creating monster, generating tons of steals and blocks. On the offensive side, his early production and likely his minutes will depend on how he shoots. His form has massively improved, and his 80% free throw shooting, as well as his 42% mark on floaters, serve as extremely positive indicators of future shooting. And it's important to note that Tari shot 43% from deep across his final 17 games at LSU, after shooting just 27% in his first 16. The one thing preventing me from feeling extremely confident in Tari's shot is that he'll often load his shot in line with his right shoulder instead of the center of his chest, which I think is why there's such a stark contrast between his shooting numbers from the right and left sides of the court. Tari shot over 45% on threes from the right corner, right wing, and above the break, compared to just 21% on the same shots from the left corner and left wing. Tari was a much improved finisher his sophomore year, jumping to the 56th percentile on shots around the basket, a big leap from his 36th percentile grade in his first year. Tari's finishing woes come from 2 issues. The first is how right-hand dominant he is. He shot just 7 for 31 at the rim this year with his left hand, and on top of that, he has somewhat limited wiggle, which makes it challenging for him to find the best finishing angles, but flexibility is something that will improve greatly as he continues to develop. If you look at the highlights, Tari makes some truly phenomenal passes, but at the same time, he struggles with accuracy and timeliness, which can lead to windows closing despite him making the right read. I think a realistic outcome sees Tari become a solid 4th or even 3rd scoring threat while offering solid passing. Improved fluidity pairing with his already elite athleticism, leading him to become a high-level threat at the rim. And defensively, he'll be one of the most prolific steal and block creators in the league, while offering the switchability on ball that most NBA teams desire. An outcome where he hits his ceiling would see him become one of the premier play finishers in the game. He would need to continue to improve his willingness to shoot and hopefully his ability to shoot from the left side. If he can become even an average finisher with his left hand, his ability to generate self-created rim attempts paired with his athleticism would make him an electric rim runner. And defensively, his switchability along with high steal and block rates could see him become a fringe all-defensive caliber player. Tari has a slight chance of sneaking into the back end of the top 10, but I think he'll most likely end up going somewhere in the 10 to 16 range. As for team fit, I think the Charlotte Hornets are my favorite destination. They run the 2nd most zone defense in the NBA, which would allow Tari to lock down an area without having to worry about navigating screens. And their love for getting out in transition on offense would both suit Tari's ability to finish plays in transition, as well as create transition opportunities with the turnovers he forces.